Areas of severe weather in the early morning hours now of Wednesday are moving across parts of northeastern Iowa, far southeastern Minnesota, and getting into parts of Wisconsin. And then also, as you go farther south, there's some severe weather, heavy rainfall across parts of East Texas and into Louisiana.
That's National Weather Service meteorologist Bob Oravec. Within the last couple of hours, a suspected tornado reported in Bossier City, Louisiana, and radar indicated a twister along I-90 in southeastern Minnesota. Earlier, several people were hurt when a suspected tornado touched down in Salado, Texas, north of Austin.
We have 23 injuries reported. 12 have been transported to area hospitals. One, I'm being told, is in critical condition. The other 11 were either not transported or treated and released at the hospital.
That's Bell County, Texas Judge David Blackburn. New York Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin has resigned in the wake of his arrest in a federal corruption investigation, creating a political crisis for Governor Kathy Hochul 7 months after she selected Benjamin as a partner to make a fresh start in an office already rocked by scandal. The first round of the NBA playoff play-in games is complete.
Kyrie shines to set up a reunion against his old team.
Behind the back, trying to get free, does so, and there it is! A perfect half for Kyrie Irving!
Audio courtesy of TNT. Kyrie Irving with the jumper at the halftime buzzer. 9 of 9 in the first half, 12 of 15 from the field for a game-high 34 points as the Brooklyn Nets defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers 115-108 and lock in the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. They'll be taking on the Boston Celtics in the first round. The Minnesota Timberwolves took home the 7th seed in the West with a 109-104 win over the LA Clippers. They're going to be facing the Memphis Grizzlies in round 1. The Clips and the Cavs, they still have a chance at the respective 8th seeds in play-in action Friday. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hey, what did the grilled cheese sandwich say to their date?
What'd they say?
You make me melt.
Oh, so cheesy.
But not as cheesy as Subway's latest Eat Fresh, Refresh menu innovation. The new Fresh Melts with 3 times the cheese. Fresh Melts are the cheese lover's holy grail. Fresh Melts combine freshly baked breads and your favorite meats topped with a triple load of cheese. All grilled to warm, toasty perfection. Try the ham and cheese melt, tuna melt, or steak and cheese melt to start. Best of all, you can make any footlong into a fresh melt. At Subway, eat fresh.
Hafaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Jose, I start the show that way every day. And you notice I don't say we start the show that way every day. It's me. I start the show that way every day to remind our international radio listening audience that we are a constitutionally oriented, conservative call-in talk show. And we've always been a call-in talk, a conservative talk show, call-in talk show, and I suspect we probably always will be. We being you and me both, right? All right, so let's start out with Demi Ekotny. Daily News says, our view, the island needs to have a reliable power supply. Wait a minute. A reliable power? No, a renewable power supply. Aren't we supposed to be 100% solar right now, Jose?
But that's not reliable.
Well, I don't know, is the Daily News out of step here with Clint Ridgell?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what the Daily News is saying. The legislature and the governor were right to approve Bill 213, now a public law, which will allow a 41-megawatt generator to be constructed on Cabris Island. The product needed an exemption because the Guam law passed in 1993 requires all fossil fuel plants generating more than 1 megawatt to be located at least 1,500 feet from a school. Jose Rios Middle School is 1,200 feet from the proposed plant. While the goal is to eventually move away from using fossil fuels, Guam power supply is fragile, and we need to get a new plant online as quickly as possible. A few weeks ago, the Guam Power Authority had to use the diesel backup generators at the Waterworks Authority pump stations and asked the Navy for help to avoid power rationing. While repairs are being made to Cabris 1 generator, which was damaged by an explosion, Guam is vulnerable to power outages. Even those of us who remember the power rationing of the 90s, movies abruptly ending in theaters, waiting hours to finish cooking dinner on an electric stove, planning our evenings around the rationing schedule, probably haven't thought about what that would look like in 2022. Maybe we ought to just do it a couple of times, just to remind the eco-fascists what they're talking about here. Kids would be unable to use the internet for homework. Streaming services would be down. We almost saw that recently when PT9 generator had to be shut down for a day for repairs. Public Utilities Commission Dr. Jeff Johnson said the emergency showed the island's need for more generators. I think it's pretty obvious we have a system that's barely holding together at this point, he said. Until we get the new Ukadu power plant running, we're probably at risk of seeing load shedding at almost any point. In signing the bill that allows the new power plant to be built, the governor noted that an electrical grid reliant on fossil fuels such as diesel produces emissions and particulate matter that can impact human health and environment. She also noted she has a responsibility to make sure the island has a reliable supply of electricity. Without that reliable power supply, our economy and our quality of life will suffer. Boy, you can say that again. If you remember the days of load shedding, I don't think anyone who lived through it would ever want to go back to it, if there's any way to avoid it.
I was living in Connecticut at the time that great northeastern blackout happened. I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe 2004 or something like that. What was interesting is the town I lived in has the only self-sustaining power plant in Connecticut. So we had electricity, and I was able to watch on TV all the reports of it while everybody else was in the dark.
With no power.
Yeah, but it was pretty rough for everyone else around me because it was a small town that I had.
Were you able to combat the schadenfreude that would arise in a situation like that?
Yeah, to me, I wasn't. I was like, it could be worse. We could be on Guam.
Yeah. Okay, let's go straight to the card. And, of course, the first item on the card is Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And in short, systemic racism means calling something red and being militant about it, being belligerent about it. It's red, even though your eyes tell you it's really orange. That's what systemic racism is all about. And we're going to go to Tony. The first item on the card is, well, we've got a little more Public Law 36-34. Some folks just can't get it right. And then we go to Tony Atta versus the Fourth Amendment. And next in the card is Radio Pravda versus Tall Tales. Now, for you younger folks that probably don't remember, that probably never heard the word Pravda before, Pravda is Russian word for truth. And back in days of Soviet Union, official newspaper for Soviet Union is called in Russian Pravda. So you know it's truth because it comes from Russian government. Yeah, so we're going to have our own version of Radio Pravda right here on the island. And then we're going to get back to GWHS, which stands for Guam Woke High School, and JoJo versus the girls. And after that, we've got more of Jane's Follies. And we're going to get a little different slant on Jane's Follies. The bishop put out a statement. So I'm going to talk about the bishop's statement and his role in the game, so to speak. And then I've got Red Rice versus 2+2. And then some stuff that's been on the card for quite a while. So we're going straight to what we've already talked enough, I think, about systemic racism. You know what it is, right? And then we've got the Public Law 3634 portion of the agenda. This one could be serious. It's the Santa Rita Municipal Planning Council regular meeting, April 20. First item, roll call to order. Second, roll call. Third, approval of minutes. Fourth, new business. GLUC application, blah, 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 engineers, TJ Engineers, PC, on behalf of the Power Authority, request a conditional use permit to allow the construction of a new 115 kV power station on 1 acre lot 402-2 in the municipality of Santa Rita. So this looks like one of those hybrid meetings of the GLUC. And we know that when the GLUC meets, if the mayor's council screws up its agenda, it voids the meeting of the GLUC. So they're going to talk about building a power plant, something we're all very interested in. That's item 4. Here's item 5, old business. What old business? Well, we're not going to tell you. Just old business means stuff that we've talked about before, and we're going to talk about it now, and we might very well act on it. Just throwing in there old business like that means that whatever action they take concerning the GLUC application is void. When will they ever learn? Next on the card, we've got Tony Atta versus the Fourth Amendment. And just to refresh your recollection, let me read the Fourth Amendment from my handy copy of the Constitution here that I never leave home without it. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Okay? When a person is involuntarily subjected to a drug test, guess what? That's a seizure and a search. Pretty well settled law as far as the Constitution is concerned. So here's today's story. Lawmakers seek override as governor vetoes bill for drug testing and licensing requirements. Governor Lujan Guerrero has vetoed a measure that would have required drug testing of resigning government employees if they wanted to keep their reemployment rights. Now, draw a string around your finger there for reemployment rights, as well as requiring employees to pass a drug test upon reemployment. Senator Tony Atta, the main sponsor of Bill 123-36, responded by stating he would push for an override at the next session. Government of Guam agencies do not possess powers that the authors of Bill 123-36 assume they do. Agencies cannot announce random testing for all employees, as the bill requires. A prerequisite to the bill's requirement of testing to retain reemployment rights, the governor wrote in her veto message. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that government-sponsored drug testing qualifies as a search under the Fourth Amendment and would need to be performed on reasonable suspicion of wrongdoing in order to be reasonable. This requires specific information that an employee is under the influence of drugs or alcohol before an employee could be subjected to a drug test, the governor wrote. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know. I think if there's reasonable suspicion that the employee has been dealing drugs, that might be enough. Random testing is allowed only for employees in test-designated positions, like maybe airline pilots, law enforcement, transit drivers, and other positions highly regulated for public safety. Moreover, individuals seeking employment already are required to pass a pre-employment drug test, the governor added. Anybody who signs up with the government of Guam before he goes to work got to take a drug test. This pre-employment test is more effective in protecting the people than a provision of a statute that's unenforceable without violating the United States Constitution, Leon Guerrero concluded. So Governor Leon Guerrero is all of a sudden a Constitution buff. Wow. If you live long enough, Jose, you're liable to see almost anything. Ada said Bill 123 would have closed a loophole that allowed government employees to dodge random drug testing by resigning and then invoking their right to reemployment. There's that word again. Drug abuse by government workers is unacceptable, and I intend to move for an override of the governor's veto during the next legislative session, the senator added. Well, 123 did not garner the governor's approval. It did pass with 12 votes in favor and none against, more than enough votes to override her veto. Senators Nelson, Rangel, and Mary Torres did not vote on the bill because they were absent. Now, apparently Shelton voted on it because I didn't see anything in here about Shelton signing up to be quarterback. Okay, now let's look at the Bill 123. But before we see what Tony did to it, let's examine the law that's on the books right now, okay? It's 4 GCA Section 2108. It's titled Reemployed Employees. And it says this: former classified employees of government of Guam who were in good standing at the time of resignation may be hired at not less than the salary they earned at their former position if they apply for the same or comparable job in the same department. This reemployment credit privilege must be exercised within a 4-year period. The employee may waive the privilege. Do you know what it means, Jose? Because I don't. I've seen all these words before, but when I put them together, it doesn't make any sense. So it says a former classified employee in good standing may be hired. Doesn't say must be hired. May be hired at the salary they earned at their former position. Now, this law goes back a long way, so we were woke way back. Okay, now I see this as something that gives a privilege to management. Let's say that Smucker Huckowitz resigned in 2018, and he comes back. He wants to go back to work now, and he's within his 4 years. And instead of starting out at step 1, I say, I'll tell you what, Smucker Huckowitz, I really need cops. So if you come back now, I'll let you start at the same pay grade you held when you left. So this is a privilege for management. It is not a right for the employee. Let me read it one more time. Former classified employees of government of Guam who were in good standing at the time of resignation may be hired at not less than the salary they earn at their former position. So this is not a right of reemployment. It doesn't say must be hired. It says may be hired.
Are you listening, John O'Connor?
If they apply for the same or comparable job in the same department. Now, this part makes no sense at all. This reemployment credit privilege must be exercised within a 4-year period. That makes sense. And then this. The employee may waive this privilege. What privilege is he waiving? The only way this makes sense is this. Smucker Huckowitz comes back within the 4 years, says, I want to go back on the force, Chief. Will you hire me? And the chief, of course, says, I wanted to hire you. He said, from the get. Anyhow, the chief says, yeah. And he says, I want you back so bad that I'll put you back at the salary you were earning at the time you resigned. And then the cop can say, well, that's very generous, Chief, but I don't want to be greedy, so I'll waive that privilege. You don't have to hire me back. It makes no sense. This is as bad as it gets.
This might be a stretch, but I think it goes down to the traditional act of Guam likes to do waves.
Likes to what?
Like to do waves.
Waves, yeah.
So they just put it in there because it just seems natural.
Yeah, exactly. Just like we're going to waive the requirement to make up the school days, right? So obviously, Tony Atta didn't read this before he drafted his amendment. And this is what his amendment says. He starts out with a key word, notwithstanding. Notwithstanding any other provision of law or administrative or personnel rules or regulations, any employee who resigns his or her position subsequent to the announcement of a government-sponsored drug testing for the employee's position shall submit to said drug testing prior to resignation or forfeit all reemployment rights. What reemployment rights? There are no reemployment rights. So talk about a paper tiger, right? Talk about a hollow remedy. So you're not plugging any loopholes here at all, Tony. You're just you're doing, you're becoming a co-sponsor of ignorance, the ignorance of the law as it exists. Now, if you really wanted to do something, what you could have done was junked 2108 in its entirety. And you could have come back with a real statute that said something like along the lines, an employee who resigns in good standing shall be reemployed at his previous pay rate within 4 years, provided that he had a clean record, provided that crank your drug test in there. So make it a condition precedent. But it's so much easier, it's so, and of course, you know who counsel for the minority is, don't you, Jose? It's me and Ray. If we feel like it. They think that they can be an effective minority without having counsel on board. And this is a classic example of the garbage they're going to turn out.
Who do they think they are, the medical board?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and perhaps the governor was being kind when she vetoed it on this basis instead of going through the same ritual that I just went through when I read the bill.
She probably just learned something today, too. You give her a lot of credit.
Could be. Yeah, could be. Okay, next item on the card, Radio Pravda versus Tall Tales. Which government officer here in the government of Guam tells me what to do with my show, Jose?
None.
You know who tells them to go pack sand? Me.
Exactly.
And there's nothing they can do about it. I can be as critical of government officials, employees, etc., as I want, and there's nothing that there's no power that they could exercise that would have anything to do with it. It's called freedom of speech. And freedom of speech is best in the hands of private citizens. Which government employee, or officer, Jose, do you trust to regulate freedom of speech?
My address book is empty.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody.
Zilch.
Yeah, I don't. And of course, the definition of freedom of speech, unregulated. As soon as you have some government officer involved in regulating it, it's no longer freedom of speech. So here's today's story in the Post. Public-funded news show promises to be, quote, fair for all. Oh, okay. I guess I don't need to do this one at all then, because the show is going to be fair for all. Who could complain about that? PBS Guam, a publicly funded and nonprofit provider of educational programming on television, will be launching its own local news format show. Officials said. Now, there you go, right there. Officials. Yeah, not the governor, not someone with a name. Officials said. Ina Carrillo. Now, where have I heard that name before? Ina Carrillo. I think there's a guy named Chris Carrillo that works for the legislature. Probably just a coincidence, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. Ina Carrillo, PBS Guam station manager, on Tuesday confirmed a, quote, new program in the works in which the station will, quote, deliver a news-like format to the community. Not news, but a news-like format.
What's news-like?
Uh-huh.
Babylon Bee?
Yeah, right.
I can't wait.
Yeah. It will be patterned after the famed PBS NewsHour. And, you know, PBS NewsHour jumped right on the Hunter Biden cover-up about as fast as the New York Times. In fact, I think faster. They were right out there in front.
That's all we need to read.
Yeah, end of story.
End of story.
PBS affiliate stations across the nation produce a news product every day. Most PBS licensees are run by either local universities, educational facilities, or the local state government.
It gets worse.
From bad to worse. The fact that this is an election year has nothing to do with the launch. Then why are you mentioning it?
Exactly.
Methinks the lady dost protest too much. And more so about timing, Carrillo told the Guam Daily Post. PBS Guam recently received $500,000 worth of state-of-the-art equipment and upgrades to help modernize the Manilo facility, as well as comply with FCC requirements. So the national government's given them $500,000 to compete with private radio stations. You know what the size of the grant that we get for Tall Tales is, Jose?
Zero.
Zero, yeah. And that's about the only thing that I would take. It kind of reminds me of Hillsdale College in Michigan. I don't know if you're familiar with Hillsdale or not. Hillsdale College puts on a really good leaflet called Imprimis on a monthly basis. You get on their mailing list, they'll mail it to you free. And they do a lot of really good work, especially online. They do an email service, et cetera. They're conservative, and they are a four-year college. They don't take a nickel's worth of money from any government agency at all. Kids that want to go to school on a Pell Grant, sorry, and by doing that, they are completely unfettered. They can do exactly what they want to do. They don't have to let Herman play on the girls' rugby team if they don't want to. Yeah, but we got to go the other way. We're gonna subsidize. We're gonna give $500,000 to the government to compete with private companies. All right, let's take a short break here for commercials.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so here we go. I'm talking about Radio Pravda here on Guam. And Bonnie Suba reminded me something else about Hillsdale. They also have free online courses, and they're good courses. American history, constitutional law, things like that. It's a really good outfit, and it just shows you what people can do if they get free of the government. But no, not here. You know, when the national government is giving a government agency $500,000 to compete with private radio, and of course you just heard our commercials. The fact that people want to advertise on our show is what makes these shows possible. If there weren't sponsors for The Point, there would be no Tall Tales. We have to pay our own way as we go along. Not like PBS, not where you're on a government salary. It doesn't make any difference what you do or you don't do. You're going to get paid. And then we got the national government dumping in $500,000 to give them state-of-the-art equipment. All the better to compete with private industry. You know, the definition of socialism is a system where the government owns the factors of production and distribution. Well, here we are distributing the news. Classic example of socialism. Jose, do you remember when the bill for this initiative came before the legislature?
Not at all.
Yeah. You know why you don't remember it?
It never happened.
Exactly. It's hard to remember something that didn't happen. So when did the folks out here in our democratic territory get to decide whether or not we want the government to compete with private industry?
They said it would be fair.
Yeah, they're going to be fair, though. Fair for all. Adelup and PBS Guam said the money that was used to buy the equipment was from a U.S. Department of Interior technical assistance grant that Carrillo applied for in 2019 with assistance from the Guam State Clearinghouse. I'm so happy for them. There will be no bias, and our coverage will be fair for all. Great. Yeah. How do you do that?
You state it.
Yeah, you just say it, and then everybody must believe it, right? Carrillo said, responding to a question about a government-run PBS news program during a gubernatorial election year. Well, it's too bad the Post isn't running editorials anymore, because this is a dandy editorial. Well, PBS Guam is a government agency. It also reports to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which also funds the station, Carrillo said. She also said PBS NewsHour is one of the most trusted news programs on television in the nation.
Wrong.
She's talking about Fox? They have reporters on the ground in Ukraine and other parts of Europe as we speak, covering critical, unbiased issues for the world. You know, anybody, you know, this thing about, you know, we're completely unbiased. It's kind of like the guy who wants to tell you something. He says, let me be honest with you. And then he tells you something, and you're thinking, I guess if he doesn't preface his remarks with that statement, he's going to lie through his teeth. Oh, I'll be perfectly honest here. Unlike my ordinary way of delivering information. So when people say, we're going to be scrupulously fair.
And throughout the article.
Yes, and keep saying it over and over again. Vice Speaker Tina Munga Barnes also shared the information about PBS Guam's news show during the April 8th presentation of the new studio equipment. I understand that based on the Lieutenant Governor's words and just from the PBS family. Boy, the farther I get here, the less I like it. The PBS family. Y familia en Carrillo?
We're going to be very, very, very balanced.
Yeah.
That's my bad Godfather accent.
Make him an offer he can't refuse.
It's going to be good. News-like.
Yeah, from the PBS family that they will be launching PBS News, joining our PBS counterparts in delivering fair, unbiased, accurate, and timely information to our people. No sense listening to Fox News. No sense listening to The Point. No sense, certainly not Tall Tales, because you can get fair, unbiased, accurate, timely information from the government's radio station. That's great. And then Munga Barnes goes on to say, and what better gift that you can give back to the community, Barnes said. She's really got away with Miss Insular Cases herself, right? She's really got away with words. PBS has started recruiting professionals from other media organizations to work on the news format show. Now, of course, they'll probably pay about the same wages as the private stations will, right?
Well, we know they fit right in.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, the folks that go from KUAM or K57 to the governor's office probably double their salaries in one short ride to Antelope. So not only will they be competing on the airwaves, but I suspect that they'll be out paying a lot more money. I don't care how much you guys pay. I ain't going. Find some other columnist. I'm staying here. Crystal Paco San Augustine, the governor's director of communications, on Tuesday said the fact that some of the best and brightest of the local news media pool are interested in contributing to PBS future speaks volumes about the level of professionalism that small team of industry members displays, and also
the salaries offered.
Yeah, also the salaries offered.
Because that's what they bemoan about government jobs. We have to give these salaries to get the best and brightest. Yeah. Well, I thought they wanted to serve in government, but we have to have the salaries to match it.
Public service. Yeah.
Public service.
Yeah, the ones that are working for private stations now, well, when they go to work for the government from Radio Pravda, will be able to brag, I'm engaged in public service. Antelope is not getting into the news business.
Well, we don't need to now.
Yeah. Across the nation, PBS stations have news programming such as Amanpour. Have you ever watched Amanpour?
Again, bad example.
Yeah. They are chartered and must remain fair and balanced. We have no reason to believe that our local PBS would not conduct themselves in the same manner. And then you're naive. If you have no reason to believe that, you are naive. Carrillo on Tuesday said the station will be releasing more information about the new program when it's ready to launch. My team has worked very hard to bring the station to a place where we can finally produce Sustaining. You mentioned that. Anytime you can use the word sustaining in a sentence, that's great.
How does a nonprofit sustain itself?
Well, it gets a lot of government money.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Yeah, can finally produce sustaining and viable programs for our station. And it's a feat we are all proud of. PBS can be contacted at 734-5483 or by visiting pbsguam.org. I have a humble suggestion. Call that number, and when somebody answers, say, Bob told me to tell you to go fly a kite. By the April 8 equipment presentation, Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio said the kind of education that public television provides the people of Guam and the Northern Marianas is irreplaceable. At the height of the pandemic, officials said PBS partnered with the Department of Education and launched PBS University and PBS University Higher Learning, which have become invaluable resources for students during the lockdowns and the Wuhan virus restrictions. The station also launched its second TV channel called PBS Kids 24/7. Well, I just shudder to think what they're putting on that. Yeah, they haven't used the word woke yet in this release, but they don't have to. There has been a sea change here in PBS board chair Donovan Brooks. Wow, Donovan said at the April 8 event, that began when Ina Carrillo took over as a station manager. Not happy about that one, Jose.
You know, if we had a drinking game that said take a shot every time they said fair and unbiased, yeah, we wouldn't have an audience left.
Exactly.
Maybe plastered.
We'd be drunk. Okay, we're going to pick up on something that we covered yesterday, which is, let's see. More GWHS and JoJo versus the girls. And GWHS, of course, stands for Guam Woke High School. I did an article yesterday that ran in the PDN that quoted the coach of the Tizan Titans, who had a game with the Guam Woke High School that had a male playing on it. There was a boy playing on the girls' rugby team who charged through the Titans and charged so hard that 3 of the girls got hurt. And Kerber commented on that in the article that Patrick Lujan, who seems to be the only journalist still standing here, picked up on. But when Jojo Santo Tomas covered it for the Daily News, he didn't say anything about the guy playing with the girls. He did quote Kerber and say this: Titans coach Conrad Kerber said his girls exceeded his expectations following a setback 2 weeks ago. That was it. And we have KUAM news. It's an issue that's been making national headlines. Should transgender athletes be allowed to play women's sports? Now, I commented about this a little bit yesterday, and let's talk about the word transgender. Transgender doesn't have the ability to change reality. If a man is a man, if he has male plumbing, if he has both an X and a Y chromosome, he is a man. Giving him different nomenclature does not change what he is. You can call him a transgender female, but that does not change him at all. It's a form of pretending. And we've gotten very good at pretending here in the woke 2020s. We can pretend that 2 men can get married just as though a man and a woman can get married. We can pretend that a man who wants to be a woman bad enough can become a woman. We can pretend that it's okay for a boy to play on the girls' rugby team and injure 3 of the girls on the other side. And when it's time to stand up, who stands up? The coach of the girls' rugby team, of the team of the girls that got hurt? No. Here's what Kerber, the coach of that team, said. I believe that we should all have the utmost respect for the life identity choices that are made by any person and embrace those choices. Now, I think if you were to decode that, what he's saying is, I believe that if a man wants to pretend that he's a woman, we should embrace that choice. I ain't going to do it. Will I tolerate it? Yeah, I'll tolerate it. Will I embrace it? No. Will I celebrate it? Damn sure no. And that's exactly what he's saying. He said, I believe that we should all have the utmost respect for the life identity choices that are made by any person and embrace those choices. However, I must take a firm stance on defending the safety of our youth athletes when those choices impede upon the physical well-being of others. Now, the coach of the other team, Joe Mancuso, still hasn't said boo. This is Guam High, the so-called military high school, right? So we've had others that really wanted to play hide the ball. The KUAM story picks that up. Yeah, let's take a short break and I'll come back to this item here.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So Kerner weaseled his way around it, not wanting to offend anybody, not wanting to address the issue head on. Paul Claros, who is the league organizer, said we're going to have some discussions about this. And we have an organization called the Guam Rugby Football Union and an Interscholastic Sports Association, both of which said that discussions are ongoing. So no one wants to come out and say a boy should not be playing rugby with girls, which is what we're really talking about here. So these folks, they decided they wanted to do some gardening. So they went up to Home Depot to buy something they could dig with. Now you'd think the average person would go to Home Depot, and if he couldn't find it, he'd ask a clerk, or they would ask a clerk, where would I find a spade? Not anymore. You would approach the clerk and say, I'm interested in the purchase of a pointed entrenching tool. Do you mean a spade? No, I never call a spade a spade. Yeah, this verbal gymnastics that's used to always be politically correct in the face of red rice. You know, this is classic red rice. We don't want to be burdened with this idea of talking about a boy playing girls with a girls rugby team. No. We don't want to do that. We'll have some discussions, and we'll figure out some way that we can avoid this. And Coach Kerber, maybe the girls need to be at thicker pads or something like that. This is really, really disappointing. And it's a classic example of the woke 2020s. It's more important to be woke than to do the right thing. And that's where we are right here. Now, the only outfit in this whole lash up here that manned up was the Academy of Our Lady.
They did what?
They manned up. That used to have a meaning, hey, you better man up, buddy. Yeah. So the Academy of Our Lady of Guam's rugby team coaches unanimously agreed to enforce the National Rugby League rule over the weekend, which means no guys who pretend to be girls can play rugby with the girls. Let's have a cheer for the Academy girls, Jose. Yeah. Now, as time goes on, it's going to be pretty easy to recognize the Academy rugby players in a crowd. They'll be the ones that don't have crutches. Yeah, because they didn't get hurt playing rugby. All right, so that brings us up to Floris's Follies. Oh, no, wait a minute. Is it already? Yeah, Floris's Follies already. Now, Floris's Follies arises from the fact that the 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats introduced an anti-abortion bill on Friday. And, of course, the pro-abortion folks have come charging out to criticize them and everyone who doesn't understand that a woman has the right to kill an unborn child, so long as it's unborn. Yeah. And of course, I have a really easy way of framing this issue, and it goes like this. When is it permissible to kill an innocent, helpless human? And I think I know the answer to that. I think the answer to that is never. Now, you can get into all kinds of sophistry, verbal gymnastics, talk about a woman's right to choose, a woman's bodily autonomy, etc. And Jane Floris, in what I call Floris's Folly, told us that you could also use a straw man fallacy to your advantage, find several ways of stating inappropriate moral equivalencies, and go on like that almost ad nauseum. And fortunately for Jane, she's not alone because others have joined the parade, and I want everybody to know who these people are. There was an article that ran in the Post that is attributed to several folks who attached their names to that article. Anita Areola, Ellen Bez, who's a doctor. First of all, do no harm. Where did you ever hear that before, Jose?
The Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, first of all, do no harm. Annie Bordallo, another doctor. Mariana Cook-Wynn, who's the governor's daughter. I suppose the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Jose. Lisa Dames, or as it used to be pronounced, Damas, Lisa Damas. Maneka de Oro, who's certainly a doll. Jane Floris, Regine Bisco Lee, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, Stephanie Lorenzo, Michelle Vuocolo, Vanessa Williams, and Kiana Yabut are women leaders in medical, legal, local government, and civic communities on Guam, and they are also the ones who favor killing babies in the womb. Now, of course, one of those people has made a name for herself quite some time ago. That would be Vanessa Williams, who I think really laid it out in very clear terms what the so-called right of abortion is all about. Vanessa said, quote, "It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So there's not any large constitutional principle there. There's no humanist doctrine that underlies these words. There's no great devotion to a sacred principle. This is just an example of what it's all about. Convenience.
But you know, she wasn't completely truthful in her statement here. Whether and when to have children means to actually give birth to a child. What she meant to say is whether and when to terminate the life of a child from every other choice in our lives. Because that's what this is about.
Well, that's kind of the way not the denotation, but the connotation of what she's saying. Yeah, it's our choice, because the word choice, it's our choice whether to have a child, whether to have one or not to have one, and it's absolute. It's an absolute, and it's so important to the Democrats. It's probably the most important plank in the Democrats' party. You know, you can be a Democrat and not be pro-abortion, but boy, you are in a really small minority, and it's really hard. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll turn to the Bishop of Guam to see what his words are on this subject.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A person of interest. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Mayor Eric Adams calls it a sick attack on innocent New Yorkers. Tuesday morning shooting on a subway train in the borough of Brooklyn that left 10 people wounded and scores of others fleeing for their lives. Plenty of clues were left behind.
A Glock 17 9mm handgun. 3 extended Glock-type magazines.
The NYPD's chief of detectives, James Essig.
We had 33 discharged shell casings, 15 bullets, 5 bullet fragments, 2 detonated smoke grenades, 2 non-detonated smoke grenades, a hatchet.
Also found was a key to a U-Haul van parked near where the gunman entered the subway system. Police say that van was rented in Philadelphia by a man they believe to be 62-year-old Frank James. They've named him a person of interest. $50,000 in reward money has been posted. Volatile weather is reported across much of the country.
You have potential for severe weather stretching across a large part of the middle part of the country. And with that severe weather, there's potential for high winds, large hail, and tornadoes.
National Weather Service meteorologist Bob Oravec. Several mobile homes are reported damaged in northwestern Louisiana. 23 people were hurt Tuesday when a tornado struck near Salado, Texas. The Pentagon investigating reports that Russian troops have deployed chemical weapons in Ukraine. Russia's President Putin says the military operation there will continue, saying the peace talks are at a dead end.
Such an incoherence on major issues creates known problems to achieve final agreements acceptable for everyone on the negotiating track.
Putin calls the reports of mass killings of civilians in Ukraine fake. President Biden Tuesday called those reports genocide. A senior Pentagon official tells Fox News another package of military aid for Ukraine is being assembled, which may include helicopters. America is listening to Fox News.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers Put Branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
On the heels of another tough inflation report, the Biden administration announcing a plan to bring down gas prices over the objection of some environmentalists.
Hours before the Labor Department dropped another eye-popping inflation report, prices in March up 8.5% compared to a year ago. The White House announced that they are lifting a ban on what environmentalists call sales of dirty gasoline. The president went to the country's largest corn ethanol producer in Iowa to talk about this effort to bring down prices. And the White House is rejecting warnings that the U.S. is headed for a recession, like former Obama economic advisor Larry Summers and Wall Street firm Deutsche Bank have projected. The White House points to job creation and unemployment numbers as a sign of recovery.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. Wall Street's reaction, the Dow dropping almost 88 points, NASDAQ down 40. Krispy Kreme Donuts wants to ease the pain at the pump, announcing they will sell a dozen original glazed donuts at the weekly average price of a gallon of gasoline for the next few weeks. Right now, that's $4.11. A dozen original glazed Krispy Kremes normally sells for almost $16. Two men convicted in a mosque bombing, getting lighter than expected prison sentences.
Michael McWhorter got just under 16 years in prison. Joe Morris, 14, far less than the 35 years each man faced. Prosecutors and victims asked for leniency, and the judge listened. McWhorter and Morris testified against Emily Hari, the leader of a small Illinois militia group known as the White Rabbits. Hari was convicted in late 2020 and sentenced to 53 years in prison for the August 2017 pipe bombing of the Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center in suburban Minneapolis. No one was hurt as worshipers gathered for morning prayers. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
A gender barrier broken in Major League Baseball. The San Francisco Giants using a woman as their first base coach on Tuesday. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we go, back on Tall Tales here. We're gonna stick with Jane's Follies. We're gonna turn to somebody who makes a little sense once in a while, Archbishop Burns from the Archdiocese of Agana. And just a little bit about Catholicism here. You know, I suspect an awful lot of our tailgaters, probably the vast majority of our tailgaters, are Catholic. And I suspect that when we get into this, there will be some people who say, wow, I didn't know that that's the way it worked. So this is going to be a worthwhile undertaking. For those who aren't Catholic, the Catholic Church is of such importance that I think it's perhaps wise to have some understanding of it, even though it's not your faith, because it is... You know, Catholic means universal. It is a worldwide church. And I think that even people who aren't Catholics can recognize that the Catholic Church has done more to change the world than just about any other force that you can imagine in the last couple thousand years, and primarily to change it for better. So I think it's good that we spend a little time talking about the Catholic Church, especially when the issue before us is killing the innocent, helpless in their mother's bodies. So the bishop issued a statement on Friday, April 8th. And I'm not going to go through it all. I'll just get down to the key part. The Catholic Church takes very seriously its responsibility to speak on behalf of the voiceless and most vulnerable among us. Protecting children is an intrinsic part of who we are. The obligation to safeguard unborn children belongs to all human beings, not only Christians or people of religion. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI reminds us why this sacred duty is so important. Quote, "We are not some casual and meaningless product of evolution," Pope Benedict said in 2005. "Each of us is the result of a thought of God. Each of us is willed. Each of us is loved. Each of us is necessary. Therefore, as we enter Holy Week this Lenten season, I ask all people to please pray for our unborn brothers and sisters and those who may be contemplating abortion." I got to chide the bishop here in this next sentence. He says, "A person is no less of a human being because they aren't visible in the same way as the rest of us are." So, Bishop, you don't have to be woke. You know, you're still going to be the bishop. People are still going to cling to you, even if you're not woke. But please don't do things like that. Please use the language that you've used all the rest of your life, and don't refer to one person as they. All right. And then the rest of the bishop's statement pretty much goes into the question, winding up with our catechism of the Catholic Church in part states our teaching on abortions. Section 2270, human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Yeah, well, I think that pretty much lays it out. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is scandal. Because Catholics, you'll find out in a few minutes when I ask Jose to lay out some of the rules of the church, Catholics cannot tolerate abortion. They cannot say, well, you know, it's a woman's... Any of the stuff that Jane Flores said is I believe it's heresy, isn't it, Jose?
It is considered heresy, yeah.
It's heresy. So you cannot be a Catholic and embrace abortion. It's that simple. You can embrace abortion. You can do it legally in this country right now, or you can be a Catholic. But you can't be both. You can't embrace abortion and be Catholic at the same time. And I'm going to turn it over to Jose, who's pretty knowledgeable about these things. to kind of explain it a little bit for us. Can you, Jose?
True, and I just want to preface that I am not going to be fair, because this might offend some people because it doesn't go along the lines of fairness. And not to be mean or spirit or anything, but this is what discipline is about here. Just real quick, I know we talked about how we're going to approach this earlier before the show started, but I think I want to start with abortion as why this is an important thing to talk about in the Catholic Church, because you brought about scandal and you can't be Catholic and abortion. Because according to canon law, the church has a certain set of laws they call canon. Most organizations have canon, right? A set of beliefs or a set of laws they go by. Canon 1398 is very specific, and it says a person who procures a completed abortion incurs a, and this is Latin, forgive me, I mispronounce it, latae sententiae, which pretty means excommunication, which pretty means that it's a judgment or sentence that is brought upon already and doesn't need an authority to further push the another judgment. It's an automatic excommunication, in other words.
Someone who procures an abortion, performs an abortion, aids and assists.
There's lots of tacits to what this means, 1398, and how active participation includes this excommunication. And again, it's important to note, excommunication in the church doesn't mean you're kicked out of the church. It means you have separated yourself from God. Now, without getting into the deep theological notions of what we're talking about here, one of the biggest public participations that people have is participating in the Mass, going to church every Sunday. And part of the Catholic Mass is the liturgy, the celebration we do together called the Liturgy of the Eucharist, where we go and receive the body and blood of Christ. Everyone looks at it as the bread and wine. But for Catholics, we believe that it's the true presence of God when the priest consecrates that bread and wine. So obviously, if Christ is very holy and is the ultimate perfect being and is God, you want to be also in that state of same grace, free of mortal sin, to receive God, because the Eucharist means communion. Now, when we go up there, we have to go up there to receive, as Catholics, to be in a state of grace, which means we ought to be free. We have to be free of mortal sin. And it's almost a soft declaration that you are when you go to the receiving line, or you think that you are in a state of grace. Abortion, procuring abortion, promoting abortion, publicly stating you promote legalized abortion, brings you into automatic excommunication. So when somebody who has done that publicly or is well known goes up to receive communion, not only are they creating more mortal sin upon themselves, because if you receive communion while you have mortal sin on your soul, you're going to compound it. So excommunication helps you from compounding that mortal sin. Now, you talked about scandal earlier, and I think that's the other important thing we have to understand with people who are professed Catholics, who are public figures in Catholics, and who promote abortion or legalized abortion contrary to church teaching. And that is that they could also give a false example to other Catholics or to other people that it's okay, that abortion is okay, or that the church okays it. And not just the person receiving communion, but the person who is giving that communion, the clergy. And this is the part where we have to be very careful on how we understand what scandal is. A good definition of scandal is just an attitude or behavior which leads another to do an evil or to do a mortal sin, which is, we talked about an abortion. But another scandal is, it's even greater when somebody is an authority and is participating in the scandal. And so we it is kind of confusing sometimes when we see people who are public figures, who are professed Catholics, going up and receiving communion, because everything that I laid out about being in a state of grace, Canon 1398, it could lead other people to think that the church condones abortion. Now, the Archbishop is very clear in his letter, And I think it's a very important letter. And I think there's going to be a couple more statements coming from him and the Archdiocese in the next couple of weeks or so. But I believe that it ought to be incumbent on our church leaders and those who are teaching in the church to be very vocal about the sin of abortion, the heresy of proclaiming abortion should be legal, and to promote it. And even the simple task of bringing somebody to an abortion clinic or providing them a phone number makes you a participant as well. All that said, people are probably saying, well, who are you to judge? Right? And they're right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nobody to judge anybody at all. And in fact, judging people, telling people what their souls are like or where they're going to end up after this life is specifically and directly forbidden. You know, nobody can do that, but if you're a believer in Christ or God, only God can do that. But we are commanded to admonish. And admonish is simply telling people where they are going and the dangers of what they're doing that can lead them into, and here we call it a spiritual death. So if you're driving down the road in the wrong lane, I'm going to admonish you and say, you're going to get into an accident. I'm telling you where you can lead to. That's what admonishment is. And that's what we ought to be doing, not just ourselves. We should be calling on our clergy to do it as people of authority. And we should be calling on other Catholics who know better to start talking about their faith and saying, look, this is an intrinsic evil. This doesn't bring you into communion with anybody, especially God, and we want you to go into heaven, so please fix this. Please do something about it. The first thing we can do is support this heartbeat bill, to understand that this heartbeat bill is not about choice, it's not about pro-life, it's anti-abortion. It's about protecting the life of a unborn, helpless human baby.
So, Jose, given what you said, then I would probably be complying with what you said if I said to Anita Areola, Ellen Bez, Annie Bordallo, Mariana Cook-Quinn, Lisa Dames, Maneka De Oro, Jane Flores, Regine Bisco-Lee, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, Stephanie Lorenzo, Michelle Vuocolo, Vanessa Williams, and Kiana Yabut, that you have been excommunicated. You have excommunicated yourself.
Yeah, that's essentially what if they are practicing Catholics, that's essentially what has happened.
If they are Catholics, yeah.
That is what happened. And it does not need to take any official document from the church or a proclamation from a bishop or a priest to have anybody understand that. It's already happened.
So if those people are Catholics, and as the post says, they are women leaders in the medical, legal, local, government, and civic communities on Guam, after having added their names to this, and then they present themselves for communion at Sunday Mass, classic example of scandal, isn't it?
It's exactly what scandal is. And I just want to implore everybody to understand that these are not opinions of myself or yourself. These are not even opinions of the church in the sense that it's a new mindset. We know that people say, well, you got to separate church from state. But we don't have that same notion when we have laws against murder. We don't have that same argument when we have laws against robbing people. Even laws of adultery, right? Because that's what divorce happens, right? You can have a contested or uncontested divorce. But when we're talking about abortion, we're talking about the life of a baby. But when we're talking about leaders in the church promoting scandal, that's when we can talk about our faith. And this island, I think, is 75 to 80% identified as Catholic.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. That was enlightening, Jose. I wonder who I've got here, and let me just check the green room here and see who we've got. Another Joe wants to talk about scandal. Go for it, Another Joe. Excuse me.
Hey, Bob, can you hear me clearly?
I can't hear a word you're saying, Another Joe.
Let me try this out.
And there he goes. Go ahead, Joe.
Can you hear me, another Joe? Can you hear me, another Joe?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. When you ask me, when you ask me if I can hear you, and I can't hear you, what am I supposed to say if I can't hear you? Oh, anyhow, go ahead. Tell me what you wanted. Why you called another Joe?
So it's kind of like a service announcement, Uncle Bob. Tomorrow, I was informed that the Archbishop wants to make an announcement. So I think they're requesting that the faithful supporters, the prayer groups, be aware that at the cathedral tomorrow around 11-ish, there's going to be a statement from the Archbishop, I think, regarding the Bill 291-36, the Heartbeat Act, the Guam Heartbeat Act.
Tomorrow at 11, the bishop's going to make a statement about the Guam Heartbeat Act. Is that correct, another Joe?
To my understanding, if anyone wants to clarify, Tony Diaz from the Chancery, the Catholic radio station, I think, and the Catholic newspaper too. He's someone that can clarify that. But to my understanding, it's tomorrow, 11 a.m.
Okay, another Joe. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for your time, Uncle Bob.
All right.
Yeah, just to reinforce, he's correct. 11 a.m. at on Thursday, April 14th, at the outdoor Portico. Yeah, English is my second language, right? Portico area of the Dulce Nombre de Maria Cathedral, and he's gonna talk about this bill, and also he's gonna have the Guam Catholic Pro-Life Committee there. And again, people might think this has nothing to do with the church, and in a sense, this is not the church commanding people what to do. It's reminding Catholics of their faith and of their promise and commitment to God in Christ. And that's the least I can say about this.
Yeah, and it's fair game. It's certainly something worth talking about, and I have a feeling that there are those who didn't understand up until now that advocating abortion or assisting in it or signing on like those notable people did means excommunication. Okay, so still want to keep working with this. I've got some more from Jane Flores here. This is something that ran in the Daily News. Flores, this bill is an attempt to control women's bodies. I suppose the bishop is also attempting to control women's bodies, right?
This is the other letter from Areola?
This is later.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to the Areola letter yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs held a news conference Monday to voice strong opposition against Bill 291, which states abortions cannot be performed after detection of a fetal heartbeat. The bill, modeled after a law in Texas, was described as an unconstitutional attempt to shame women.
I don't get what that means.
Well, it's hard to shame someone who appears to be shameless to start with.
True.
An unconstitutional attempt to shame and stigmatize women by closing off access to health care. And of course, this is so interesting and so prevalent that we take this woke attitude towards the language in the 20s to redefine words so that women's health care now means killing a baby. How do you describe killing a baby in the womb? Oh, that's women's health care. Yeah.
Etymology be damned, right? Health and care.
Absolutely.
Kill, no.
This bill is an attempt to control women's bodies, said Director Jane Flores. The late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, another shining example, said that if you can't trust a woman, if she cannot make decisions about what happens within her own work realm, within her own body, then she is not a fully functioning equal person in our society. It's not a pro-life bill. Well, if that's what it takes to trust a woman, then I don't trust women. If that's the litmus, if you say that you have to allow a woman to kill an unborn child, otherwise you don't trust the woman? Boy, talk about a straw man, huh? Dr. Annie Bordallo said that although technology has gotten better in detecting a fetal heartbeat, there are still big gaps in the definition of abortion. Big gaps.
The methods?
Big gaps in the definition.
That was a big gaffe.
Yeah. A definition of abortion is to kill a baby before it's born. That's the definition of abortion. Bordallo said the constitutional right to privacy is at the very basis of similar bills. We went through that the other day, Griswold versus Connecticut. And talking about what a judge does and what a judge should do, a judge should not use his position, her position as a judge to see to it that his or her personal preferences govern his decision-making process. I used the example of capital punishment the other day. And with Roe versus Wade, there's no law on Roe versus Wade. Even pro-aborts say there's no law. It's a horribly written Supreme Court decision. But it's apparently the personal preference of even 7 theoretically conservative judges. Now, if you saw the movie Roe versus Wade, it was a movie, but it got into some of the personal dynamics of the justices, which is probably as believable as just about anything else. But I trust women. I trust anyone who says that they value human life and they don't take human life just as a matter of convenience. Quote, nobody has access to know what I talk to the patient about, this is from Annie Bordallo, except the patient. So how is somebody else going to be able to access that information? Is this going to allow the court system to break federal HIPAA laws by giving us a subpoena to those records, said Bordallo. Former Senator Raging Biscoe-Lee said that if this bill passes, it will limit the island's access to health care.
Again, disinformation is part of the protocol for talking about this.
It is.
First, Annie Bordallo, it is mandated law that information about abortions has to be reported, and none of it violates HIPAA.
Right.
Period.
Okay, so Raging Biscoe-Lee says if this bill passes, it will limit the island's access to health care, where the new definition of health. How do you, haftaimana masonga in puno na ineni, ifino English? Healthcare. How do you say kill the baby in the English language? Healthcare. Yeah. Carlotta Leon Guerrero, special assistant to the governor's office, said the legislature should also put collective efforts on the Child Protective Act. I'll come back to Carlotta as soon as we leave Wrigley Field.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Seventh inning stretch, Chicago. That means I just got 2 more innings of tall tales to go here today. 2 more innings of fun, Jose. Then we got to leave the ballpark until tomorrow. So I left off with Carlotta Leon Guerrero, special assistant at the governor's office, who said the legislature should also put collective efforts on the Child Protective Act, which creates within the jurisdiction of the family court procedures to safeguard, treat, and provide permanent planning for children who have been threatened with harm. Sounds good to me.
Sure, why not?
Can the court do that?
Don't know, but anything we can do.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Carlotta. Carlotta said there's greater need for outreach to immigrant populations to encourage and educate them on health care.
Oh, wait, but health care means abortion.
Yeah, healthcare means killing babies in the womb.
I have to think about this, yeah.
Don't think we want to wish that on our neighbors from the south. Okay, the Bureau of, there has been no abortion provider on Guam since the last provider, William Freeman, retired in 2018. The Bureau posted an online petition that had almost 1,000 signatures opposing the bill. Does that get you there? Does that get you excommunicated, Jose?
Yes. That is one of the provisions there. Yeah.
Okay. The Bureau will also be writing letters to the senators to not only vote against this bill, but consider the reason it was introduced. You know, if you don't want to talk about killing babies, talk about it's all just political, right?
I think it's self-explanatory why it's introduced, but, you know.
Okay, so Jose, you wanted to add another term to what you were talking about a little earlier, so go ahead.
Right. You know, we had a really great call right before we went to the break talking about what I spoke about as far as a church goes, and he brought up a very great factor that I forgot, a sacrament. We also have the sacrament of reconciliation, a lot of people know it as the confession, and that is absolutely the best way to mitigate, the only way to mitigate sin is to go through reconciliation, to go to confession, which means you have to be contrite. You have to have contrition for your sin, to acknowledge that it is what you're doing is wrong, and that even goes for any female who has received an abortion. Now, before, in order for you to receive that what do they call it? Admonishment of the sin, or the acknowledgement of the sin, to be wiped away, you had to receive your confession from a bishop or an archbishop of your area. But now I think Pope Francis has allowed priests to listen and hear the sin of abortion as well, because it's a very serious evil or moral sin. So that's great news and great hopeful news, because the church doesn't abandon people. It doesn't even kick people out when you excommunicate them. It's a method to bring people in, and reconciliation is that method.
Okay, well, it's a good addition. So there's hope for the signatories there. So reconciliation, still got a little bit more that I want to cover here in Jane's Follies. Now, I read the names of those who wrote a letter to the Post, and I haven't read the letter yet, so I want to spend a little time with their letter on this. And this is the letter that was over the names of Anita Areola, Ellen Bez, Annie Bordallo, Mariana Cook Huynh, Lisa Dames, Monica De Oro, Jane Flores, Regine Bisco-Lee, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, Stephanie Lorenzo, Michelle Vuacalo, Vanessa Williams, and Kiana Yabut. Before I get to that, I'm going to see what Kellis wants to tell me about abortion. Oh, I guess not. Kellis hung up. Call back, Kellis. I want to hear what you got to say. Okay, we got Frenchie who wants to chime in. I suspect that Frenchie has a full load of comments here on this subject. Go ahead, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
Fine.
Yeah, talking about scandal in the church, you know, this was a main issue last year in the American Conference of Bishops, and unfortunately, many of the bishops decided to go down the way of non-confrontation because on the national level, we have the Biden and Pelosi of this world who profess to be good Catholic in standing and who have been promoting abortion for many, many years without any apologies. They even brag about it, which is a grave scandal, as it was revealed by several of the bishops that wanted to bring it forward. But the conference decided to kind of sweep it under the rug, except for a few bishops. I think the vote was 85% against confronting politicians. Now, it's down to, like somebody mentioned, it's down to the priest a lot of time not to give communion to those people that come in sin and try to get communion. So, and we had a case during the 2020 election year where Biden went to South Carolina and one of the local priests refused to give him communion, which the media jumped on him, but his bishop actually defended him. But then they went after the bishop and he's now in trouble, I think. So, you know, St. Augustine warned us that the way to heaven was paved with the skulls of bishops. We seem to be lucky enough to have a bishop here who seems to take this thing seriously, but this is not the case everywhere. In Europe, the councils of bishops have been very quiet about the issue and basically avoiding confrontation and calling a spade, like you like to mention earlier. And so, you know, I think it's up to each one of us to be responsible and denounce it when we see it. Avoiding to denounce evil leads us to more evil. And we've seen it in Europe, especially, where it was first abortion, and now they are pushing for killing elderly people because they take too much room in the retirement home. So, under the guise of being human, of course, you know. It's a grave thing, and we've seen over, especially since the Obama administration, a lot of attacks against organized religion. And this is because after family, organized religion is one of the last ramparts for morality in our society. And we have seen the high price we can pay due to a lack of morals in our society. And we see it more and more with the, you know, the CRT teaching kids about different sexual things in kindergarten and so on and so forth, and the list is endless. And basically trying to take away the teaching abilities of parents and the churches away from them and putting it in the name of anonymous teachers in schools who then deny to say to agree about what they say, but whose first words out of their mouth is "Don't say anything to your parents." So we adding a crisis of civilization where basically you have an organized cabal of large government, and this is what they advocate. They want more intervention of the government at the expense of family and churches. And I think on Guam we are fairly lucky that we still have that religious community fairly well alive, despite the scandals of Aperon and some of his minions, that people have remained faithful, and no matter what affiliation they have, Catholics or not, and that people are fairly religious and still fighting for this. But it is also important to note that some priests on Guam have refused to give communion to some of those political hacks that have been promoting the murder of children, and both under Aperon and Archbishop Hahn. And actually, Hahn told those politicians to go fry an egg, while Aperon basically told the priest not to do it again. And that's why, for example, our current governor used to go at the friary because some of the priests at the cathedral refused to give her communion. So it's very interesting. It's been kept on the hush-hush, and some of the priests actually had to pay a political price for doing the right things for the right reason. And so we see that the power of money and corruption is also coming into our churches by many different ways. So it's in this Holy Week, I think it's important that we are all aware of those things and make sure that we stay steadfast in our convictions.
Very well put, Jose. Excuse me, Frenchie. Thank you very much for...
Jose, can you see?
Yeah. Good talking to you, as usual.
All right.
So long. Yeah, so what happened to Kellis, Jose?
Oh, he just wanted to remark. I kind of made a comment earlier about a turtle egg, so I'll just repeat it.
Okay.
It's a federal law to mess with turtle eggs, even to touch them.
Uh-huh.
So I said maybe we should rename an unborn baby an unborn turtle, and they'll stay out of the womb.
Yeah, it'd be far more...
They'll protect it.
Yeah, far more protected. Yeah. We'll have to check with Jane Flores on that one. Okay. So, yeah, let's head for Churchill Downs, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers Put Branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
So here we go. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Just a couple more furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line. The next item on the card here is Jane Flores and others, and I've already read the names of the others, versus innocent, helpless humans. And this is an article that ran in the Post. It's actually a letter to the editor that ran in the Post over those signatures. It's like clockwork. You can count on it. Virtually every election year, one or more senators copy an anti-abortion bill from another state or from the Right to Life template, slap their names on it, and introduce it in the Guam legislature. A nice try, guys. Really nice try. And, of course, several things that I would say about that. I know you'd much rather talk about the political machinations of senators than taking the life of helpless, innocent babies. It's much easier for you to talk about that. And, of course, Tim Rohrer gave the lie to everything you're saying here on Jungle Watch. He went through the chapter and verse, and what you're saying, sounds good. It's got a nice click to it, but it's just wrong. And then, even if it isn't, it prompts me, if you're correct, it only prompts me to come up with a very large, so what? A good idea is a good idea if it's at the beginning of a 2-year term or at the end of a 2-year term or in the middle of a 2-year term. And this is a good idea for all of the reasons that we've been talking about here. Just coming right back again to that one question, when is it okay to take the life of an innocent, helpless human? And the answer is never. And any efforts to save the lives of those innocent, helpless humans is worthwhile, regardless of when it happens, how it goes about, etc. So once again, we have the straw man here. It's like clockwork. The straw man. These folks, and I got into this yesterday, these folks, these anti-abortion people, they're not committed to anything. They don't really have a deeply held belief that goes into the kind of the spiritual aspects of what we believe in. They're just playing crass, cold political games. And if they win, fine. If they lose, well, they'll try it again later on, because the stakes are only winning and losing the political game, not any human lives. That's what they're saying.
And it's interesting that they use the same rhetoric every single time. That's long since been denounced, long since been fact-checked. Just going through this letter, abortion is one of the safest medical procedures performed in the United States, except for the unborn baby.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's what's antiquated, it says here, that are sponsoring an antiquated, narrow, and disconnected perspective of healthcare for women. We know better now. We know better what this is. It's not healthcare. So all this language here is actually the antiquated language of pro-abortionists.
That's right. It's been around for...
Talk about copycat.
Yeah, it's been around forever. But it's offensive to start out by saying virtually every election year, one or more senators copy an anti-abortion bill. That's offensive. It's like saying Chris Duenas does not have a strong feeling for what he's doing. He's only playing a very cynical game like blackjack or checkers or chess. And of course he wants to win, but if he doesn't win, well, so what?
At the risk of being ad hominem myself, I can see why they disregard the life in the womb if they disregard any senator who brings up a bill that protects the life in the womb.
Exactly. So they would condemn senators that do this because, obviously they're not genuine. On the other hand, they would embrace someone who says it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. It's one of the signatures of the letter.
Now, Pete Scrow brought up something yesterday that was very important, I think, that's missing in the discussion, and that's the role of men. And I said a little bit of something yesterday, and I don't know if these ladies who signed this letter understand that the language they're using is probably a main factor of why men have abandoned their families and their children, because they're not needed.
Mm-hmm.
They're being told they have no voice. We're being told we don't matter in this game. So why should any man want to even pay for child support? His body, his choice, right?
That's right.
He doesn't have to work for it.
It's a free pass.
It's a free pass. We're giving free pass to loser men to say, I don't need to do anything because they're doing everything themselves.
Yeah, and nothing. You know, if she thinks, oh, I can't support the child, well, she knows what to do. Yeah. So going on with this article, the latest copycat bill, quote, copycats in quotes, is 29136, copied almost verbatim from the Texas anti-abortion law. And it is so dangerous and outrageous that one wonders if the sponsors understood the consequences of this bill, much less whether they actually read it.
Bob, as an attorney and you're researching law, what is one of the words that you always like to look for? I understand as precedent, right?
Uh-huh.
And precedent can be turned into a pejorative by calling it copycat.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's, you know, what the game here is, of course, is to devalue the people that are on the right side here, on those that would save the lives of babies, accuse them of being cynical players in a game, of not being serious enough to read the bill, of being copycats. The copycat bill is intended to ban abortion at 6 weeks of pregnancy before many women know they are pregnant, regardless of a woman's needs and circumstances. A woman's needs and circumstances.
Euphemism for convenience.
Yeah, it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives if we can't abort the child. Women must be able to make health decisions throughout their pregnancy that are best for their circumstances, including whether to end a pregnancy without interference from politicians. A ban on abortion at 6 weeks would prevent most women from accessing abortion at all. At 6 weeks, approximately 2 weeks after a missed period, many women don't even know they're pregnant. With a ban so early in pregnancy, most women may find that once they discover they're pregnant, it's already too late for them to get an abortion, and they'd be forced to carry a pregnancy against their will. Oh, is it time to go home, Jose? I don't know if I can stay here any longer. Such a, wow. A woman forced to carry the pregnancy to the end against her will?
Nothing is sacred.
Gosh. It's already too late for them to get an abortion and may be forced to carry a pregnancy against their will. Wow. That is just shocking. You know, I don't think any of these folks that introduced 291, I don't think they considered that at all. The copycat bill has a, quote, snitch rule that allows any person to snitch on pregnant women or others who assist or support her in obtaining an abortion. It sounds a little bit kind of like the canon law that you read, that who is culpable in an abortion, right? Anyone that assists. This rule sets a dangerous precedent by pitting neighbor against neighbor, family members against each other, and total strangers against a pregnant woman. It's a regime designed to surveil, penalize, and control women's health care decisions, their bodies, and their choices. Well, I think they got that one right. That's exactly what it is. And it is a Rule Goldberg way of attempting to save innocent, helpless lives, brought upon by critarchy, rule of judges. The judges in 1973 decided what they thought would be a good idea, not founded in the law, not founded in morals, not founded anywhere but inside their heads. And because what the ruling that they came down with affects public officials, this imaginative means had to be invented to skirt around the laws that they created to save innocent lives. Now, if you can save an innocent life without hurting someone else, is that wrong? I mean, if you just look at the moral aspects, it would seem to me that any person who can save the life of another person without injuring a third person in the process is doing the moral correct thing. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The copycat bill targets doctors, medical staff, hospitals, and entire health centers, and Planned Parenthood. Yeah, Planned Parenthood. Talk about a euphemism. Planned non-parenthood.
That has a rich history.
Yeah. What's her name?
Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger
and has to do with ethnicity. Eugenics.
Yeah. We should cull the weeds out of the garden. Yeah, commissioning bounty hunters on others is plainly and simply wrong. Well, I'll tell you what's plainly and simply wrong. Taking the life of an innocent, helpless human. Abortion is essential, time-sensitive health care, and is one of the safest medical procedures performed in the United States for everyone involved except the child that's killed. All right, I think we're about at the end of the rainbow here, aren't we, Jose?
Just about.
And it's time for me once again to say I'll see you tomorrow, and let's go, Brandon.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Searching for the subway shooter. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Police in New York City conducting a manhunt for a person of interest in Tuesday morning's attack on the city's subway system.
Police said Tuesday night it's not certain if Frank James is the man who fired the shots on the subway in Brooklyn. But a U-Haul connected to the crime was rented by him in Philadelphia. NYPD Chief James Essig.
We are endeavoring to locate him to determine his connection to the subway shooting, if any.
According to police, James has a residence in Philadelphia and also in Wisconsin. He is considered by the NYPD as a person of interest. As of now, police say none of the subway shooting victims are considered to have life-threatening injuries.
Fox's Gernal Scott. The United States is investigating claims that Russian troops have used chemical weapons in Ukraine. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says if they did, there will be repercussions.
There is a $50,000 reward out.
President Biden Tuesday calls what's happening in Ukraine genocide. But Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, says the military action in Ukraine will continue. President Biden has announced a temporary relaxation of rules that limit the sale of gasoline containing ethanol during the summer months.
The Environmental Protection Agency is planning to issue an emergency waiver to allow E15 gasoline that uses more ethanol from homegrown crops to be sold across the United States this summer in order to increase fuel supply.
The president says he blames Vladimir Putin for another big increase in the consumer price index. Prices for basic necessities up 8.5% from February to March. Wall Street reacting by turning lower on Tuesday. The Dow lost 87 points, NASDAQ down 40, the S&P 500 closing 15 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox
Fox News Podcasts Network. The Fox News Rundown. A contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day. Going far beyond the headlines. Tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Despite having vaccines readily available for much of the year, COVID-19 deaths surged in 2021, easily surpassing the fatalities from the year before. This according to preliminary numbers from the Centers for Disease Control, which also reports many more Americans died from heart disease and cancer last year. Diabetes, chronic liver disease, stroke, drug overdose deaths also all continued to rise. CDC says there were more than 3.4 million deaths in the country last year, about 80,000 more than 2020. And the UN says the pandemic drove a startling number of people into poverty.
A new United Nations report says rich countries were able to support their pandemic recovery with record amounts of money borrowed at low interest rates. But developing nations couldn't do that. Poor countries are dealing with both COVID and the crippling cost of debt repayments. All that debt also means poor countries haven't been able to spend money on improving health care or education systems. The UN is calling for wealthier nations to step up debt relief efforts. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Oklahoma virtually outlawing abortion. Governor Kevin Stitt signing a bill passed by the state legislature making the procedure a felony unless the mother's life is in jeopardy. A court challenge is a virtual certainty. Collectors will have the chance to bid on an out-of-this-world artifact today.
A sample of the moon dust collected from Neil Armstrong's Apollo 13 moonwalk is being auctioned off today by Bonham's Auction House in New York. They say it could bring between $800,000 and more than $1 million, and proceeds will go to scientific charities. Smithsonian Magazine reports that it's the first time the dust, which has been verified by NASA, will be legally sold.